Well, welcome everybody. I'm with Farida Shakshire, who is the designer of SimSim, the new Mediterranean Middle Eastern recipe app that helps users prepare Middle Eastern and Mediterranean food menus using her family recipes and also recipes from the Ziad Brothers food website. Ziad Brothers has an extensive menu, but SimSim is phenomenal. And I think the tagline is the home of Arabic recipes. SimSim, the home of Arabic recipes. And you can download that off of your Play station or off of your App Store. However you get apps, you can go there and do it. Welcome, Farida. It's so nice to meet you and talk to you.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, my mother used to travel back home to Bethlehem in the 60s and to Jerusalem, Palestine, with an empty suitcase. And she would fill it up with Middle Eastern spices and ingredients that she couldn't get here in the US. And back then, customs would allow you to bring back mlochia and tahini and all this stuff that you couldn't find here. And fortunately, today we can find almost everything. Do you have tell us a little bit about this next stage in Middle Eastern recipe food making that you've helped create with the SimSim app? Why did you do it?
I did it, Ray, because honestly, I am very, very much like so many of your listeners. So I'm an Arab. My father's Palestinian, my mother's Syrian, and I lived overseas all my life. So, as I left home and went to university and, got a job, I was in Canada and Europe and different places of the world. There, I always say there's only so much, shawarma sandwiches that you can eat. There's only
True.
so many, like pasta sauces that you can make. And
Yes.
as an Arab, we miss the flavor of, home cooked food, of, our own food. I know everybody loves maybe sushi or whatever every once in a while, but our food is our food. It's different, right? Everybody likes their own food. So as I was growing up, and I mean, I'll let my age go a bit. So I am, early 50s right now. So when I tell you the story, back when I was in my 20s, and I would, be calling my mom and saying, Mom, how do I make, mjaddara? It was an expensive like it was a very expensive recipe to make because that was an actual phone call. There was no,
Right.
WhatsApp voice, any of that stuff. And she would say to me, you put a dash of this, in Arabic, as we say, arashya, a
Right.
sprinkle of that. And it would drive me crazy because when you don't know how to cook something and your mother tells you a dash or a sprinkle, it's insane. You don't know how
Right.
much that is. And so then, you ask other people for recipes. Today, people go online, they look for recipes, they go to blogs, they go to YouTube. But the problem with that I encountered, because I created SimSim for people like me, right? So the issue that you have with that very much is when you don't know how to cook something, you cannot tell if the recipe is actually a good recipe. I know that you're a great chef and you love cooking. And so for you, for example, if I were to give you two different recipes, you'd look at them and be like, oh, this one will turn out better than that one. But when you don't have that, when you don't have that knowledge, it's very difficult. So all of the recipes on SimSim are curated. So the recipes from, our family kitchen, from, our friends, passed down for generations. I took my mom, I bought a camera. I just started taking the pictures because I wanted to make it easy for everyone. So that's the one part, right? So the recipe itself is one part. And the other part, like you rightly said, you don't know how to get the ingredients. And, you're very lucky, I think, in the States because you have actually Ziad brand. Uh,
Nowadays, yes. Oh yeah, the last 40 years,
yeah,
fortunately.
yeah. I can tell you, I mean, growing
And
up,
it's spreading. It's spreading into mainstream stores. I never found tahini in any mainstream store until I'd say the last 10 or 15 years. Prior to
ab-
that, it was so hard to find.
absolutely. I mean, growing up in Malaysia, that's where I grew up. I remember my grandmother sending so much stuff, right? So, but outside of just things being available, for someone who doesn't know how to cook, and I experienced this myself, right? So let's, keep talking about tahini. You go into the supermarket, you've never bought tahini in your life, and you stand there and you see, these brands, and there are all of these brands now that sell tahini. And, if you look at the ones that are even in the same price point, because, you associate, you say, oh, if it's cost the same, then it must be the same quality. This is the normal way a person, associates price quality. And you don't know which one to buy. So you pick up the phone and you call your mom or your friend or your aunt or whoever. So what I wanted to do with Simpson was actually make cooking easy, not just in the recipe, but to help guide people to know what they can buy, what they should be buying to make the most out of that recipe. Because you can't take and separate, the end result of a dish, the recipe and the ingredients come together. So Ziad brand is, I mean, I'm very, very fortunate to have partnered with them. They've got a great range of products, a stellar reputation, the quality is superb, and the founder's Palestinian, they're, Arabic history, culture, very much in line with what Simsim stands for.
And it's these days you can find Ziad Brother products everywhere in little ethnic stores. Even the Italian stores carry Ziad Brothers, and the Greek stores. I hate it when people ask me, "Do you want a gyros?" I go, "No, I want a shawarma." Okay, because shawarma is gyros. So we've become mainstream now. They talk about shawarma, but the nice thing, I think the point you raise that I think is really important. You're right. You go to a store, you see 10 different brands. I think you're partnering with Ziad tells them, look for that brand. And if you have to go somewhere else, you can, but at least start with that brand. You know it's going to be the right mix to begin with when you do the recipe.
Exactly. And that's, everything we do with Simsim is to make people's lives easier,
Right.
right? So it's the recipes, it's the step-by-step photos, it's, there's a weekly planner that you can add recipes to. You can, add all of the recipes to your grocery list, and it combines the ingredients. It does all of that. And it recommends to you, excuse me, which brands to purchase. And,
Right.
that brand, like you said, is a great brand.
Yeah, it's in mainstream stores all over the U.S. But what's fascinating to me is the access, the app that you put together gives me access. I don't carry my laptop around with me all the time, but my cell phone is with me everywhere. It's in my left hand all the time. And this weekend, when I was making stuffed grape leaves, I like to look at recipes to see, am I missing something? Am I putting too much of something? So I checked out the SimSim app and I used some of the recipe guidelines that you offered, and I thought it was phenomenal. Very close to what I've been cooking because I watched my mother make grape leaves every day for 50 years. How do you not know how to cook grape leaves after you see that? But people in America who don't are not fortunate to have a mother who's from the Middle East or the Mediterranean region. Now that app becomes the mom, and you can go and look at it. It's very simple. What were some of the challenges in putting an app like this together? What was the hardest? Did you put the app together yourself? Did you design it? How did that come about?
So I have a marketing background. So I was in marketing for years and years, and I had an understanding, obviously, of tech, but I'm not a techie. But I mean, challenges like anything else, a startup, all of the things that you have to do, you learn to do everything on your own. But I think the biggest challenge I had was when I was talking to people, and looking at what I wanted, how I wanted to solve the problem, was actually getting away from what's being done in the mainstream. So, when I started SimSim and I said, you know what, I'm going to do photos, it's not going to be video based. People went, but why? Everything is video based.
Right,
I said, because when you don't know how to cook something,
right,
you take a 3 hour dish or even something that takes only 45 minutes to cook, and when you condense that into a 30 second video or a 1 minute video, you end up trying to pause and rewind and all
right.
of the, and it's quite annoying, right? So I said, no, you know what, that may be what everybody's doing, but we're going to do photos, and when something's complicated, in the step we'll show a video. So for me, I think what was difficult was staying away from the temptation of not doing what the mainstream is doing and doing the things that I truly believed were what were helpful. The other thing I think also that, again, it's not so much the challenge of the tech, but really, people write and say, oh, we love SimSim, it's amazing, it's wonderful, we want to use it for everything. Can you put pizza on it? Or, can you put chocolate cake on it? Because we want it to be our app for everything. And even though that, may get people using it more often, to be honest with you, SimSim is all about Middle Eastern food and culture, and food brings people together. and really, really, that's what I want to do. I mean, when you think about it, you sit around the table, it's time to have those conversations with your family and your friends, and it brings you together. And that's what I want Simsim. I want Simsim to not only help people experience cooking Arabic food and making it easy, but I want it to bring people closer as opposed to, tear us apart.
And one interesting thing, and of course, being a chef, I'm going to consider you a chef because you make these recipes, you write them down. I like to think I'm a chef, but men, it's a funny thing about Arab men, they love to cook as much as Arab women do. But I'm going to defer to you. When one of the fears that many Americans have is that Middle Eastern food is spicy like Indian food, because the Indian food is very spicy. How do you describe Arabian Middle Eastern food to mainstream Americans so they're not afraid of it? And I don't mean afraid, but hesitant to try it because, people have their tastes and they're sometimes afraid to cross the barrier to taste something else.
No, absolutely. And I would say to you that I would ask them to imagine that the flavors of Middle Eastern food are closer to what they're accustomed to with Mediterranean food. So what would you expect with Greek food, or what would you expect with Italian food? Indian food falls into a completely different
Yes.
category. And Arabic food, actually, in terms of the flavor palette, is simpler. It's very, very much reliant also on the vegetables. It's reliant on some spices, but actually it's very much the common spices that Americans are used to in terms of flavor. Things like cumin and pepper and salt and paprika and things like that. So that's what I would say to them. Not to think of it as being that
Right.
complex Asian flavor, but think of it more as a fresh Mediterranean flavor.
And why did you partner with Ziad? I mean, just to go back to that a little bit, I mean, what was the main factor you think that drove you to say, "Hey, this is the company"? Because there's several Middle Eastern food companies. Ziad, I think, is one of the biggest. But what was the main reason why you partnered with Ziad?
Well, I was looking for a brand actually that, we had shared culture with. So, like I said, Simsim is not just about the food, it's about our culture. We even have, cultural stories about the food and things like that, right? So it was important for me to partner with not just on a product level, but also to find the right fit in terms of, culture and background and values. And I very much found that in Ziad. So, as I said, originally it was, founded by Palestinians. The majority of their ingredients are actually sourced from the Middle East. They work with a lot of Middle Eastern partners, and we share a lot of the same values.
And when you do the app, are you able to look to see which recipes are being downloaded or checked, or are you able to see the data? Tell us a little bit about that if you can. I mean, what are you seeing? Now, the app was launched, by the way, when? It was only recently, right?
It was only no, it's been available for people in the US for a while, but we haven't promoted it.
Got
It
it.
was the Ziad brand relationship, the partnership that we created, that we've started promoting it together. But yes, absolutely, I can very much see, and every day I look and see what people are doing and what people are cooking. So what I found, because we're also available also in other countries, right? We're available in the Middle East, so um, people actually in the States, people who are using it are very much enjoying cooking the main dishes. So not just things that,
Right.
you'd imagine. It's not just about people cooking shawarma or falafel at home, not buying it from a store, but things like bamia, so okra. So the stews, for example, are very popular. The kebsa is extremely popular. It's the main dishes because I think right now the majority of people who are using Simsim are actually of Arab origin. And it's that main meal that
Yeah.
we're looking for, right? It's not just the salad and the side. We want to know how to cook a main meal.
Right.
That's what I find people are looking at a lot.
And of course, there's such a difference between the English language and the Arabic language. And I know that we talked a little bit about this before the show, but how do you address that issue? Like if someone understands the name of a recipe to be slightly different than the name that's on there, from what I understand, you adjust to add that version so that the various names can be found in the app. That's
Correct.
fascinating.
Yeah, so I mean, listen, I mean, as Arabs, and especially when you look at, the Arab expats, that, most of us are more comfortable in English than we are in Arabic, right? So when you're typing in the name of a recipe, just take hummus, for example. Someone could spell it Humus,
Right.
someone could spell Hummos. There's so many different spellings. So what we try and do is we have in the keywords and the searches as many as we can think of, but always we actually also get people sending us emails, users saying, "Hey, I was looking for this, but you don't have it under this name." We tell them what it is or the spelling that we have it, but we also add their spelling as
Right.
well. But you can always, when you're on SimSim, you can also search not just by recipe name, you search by ingredient.
Yes.
So if you're looking for hummus, for example, and you don't find it, then you can search chickpeas.
Right.
You can also go to the filter because everything's categorized by mains and sides and things like that. So you can always find it by filtering through side dishes.
So you could scroll you could look up main dishes and then scroll through it to find
Correct.
what you want.
Correct.
That's how I found mine. I think I always call it, my mother called it warak dawali. So I don't know. That's the way I learned it, but there are all kinds of names for stuffed grape leaves.
Yes, we call it wara anab, which is
Yes,
the
warak anab is another one that I heard my cousin say, and I bet, we have 22 Arab countries, and I bet they all pronounce it or describe it differently. That's a challenge, but it sounds like the app is adaptable to that type of challenge,
absolutely.
to put the different names and everything in there.
Absolutely. Even in Arabic, right? People who are using the app in Arabic, because we have actually a substantial number of users using the app in Arabic, even in the States. Someone might look for shawarma and someone might look for el shawarma. So you
Yes.
just need to make sure that, whatever, as much as possible to cover all your bases.
There are a lot of Arabs that live in South America who pronounce it in Spanish too, because I know I have a lot of family in Venezuela and Colombia and Bolivia and Brazil who left Palestine in the 40s during the war and have settled there. And when I listen to them, I'm going, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? Oh, that's stuffed grape leaves. Okay, yeah. I'll eat that. I'm happy to do it. And then they add their flavor. What do you see for the future of the app, SimSim? I mean, it sounds like there's so many roads you could go down to expand it. Do you have plans for that, or have you thought about it?
I do very much so. So if you notice SimSim, even on our social presence or in the app, it's not about me and my family. Very few people actually know who's behind it, who's the founder. And that was done intentionally because the focus is on the Arabic food and culture. It's not on us as individuals. So for me, the future of SimSim actually is collaborating with others, with chefs. So, but always curated. What we do is everything we do with SimSim is about quality, right? So our guarantee is if you're using SimSim, if you cook with SimSim, you're going to get food that tastes good. Like that's our guarantee. It might not taste exactly like your mom made it because your mom has, everybody's mom has their own
But they'll
style.
get there. But they'll get there.
Right?
Yes, they
All
will.
you need to do maybe is add a bit of cumin.
Yeah,
You need to,
right.
but as a starting point, you're going to get a very, very tasty dish, right? Something that tastes good. So what we're going to do is we're going to be, working with other chefs, with other people to bring their recipes onto SimSim, giving them obviously the credits, right? So when I say, when we say SimSim is the home of Arabic cooking, it's not the home of our cooking as a family.
Right.
I really do want it to be that one gateway that, everyone can come to when they're looking for Arabic food. And, they'll find recipes not just from us, but from others as well.
Yeah, there's an Egyptian breakfast that they have. What is it with the beans? I can't think of it right now, but I always used to eat it as a kid. My mom would bring these Egyptian beans and put it in there. And when I tried to look for it, it wasn't Palestinian. So it was like, okay, how do you make this? So you might be expanding other recipes too. Do you identify them by region, for example, on the recipes? Like this is a Palestinian dish or that's a Syrian dish. You just kind of broadly present them all.
Okay, so there's two questions in there. So we actually have, I mean, the majority of our recipes are, what you refer to in English as being from the Levant. So
Right.
Palestine, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon. So that's where the majority of our recipes are from. But we do have recipes. One of our most popular recipes, for example, is for kabsa jash, the chicken kabsa, which is actually a dish very well known and originates in the Gulf. So we have a few Egyptian recipes and things like that. I have intentionally stayed away from saying that this recipe is from this country and that
Got it.
country, because, as I said earlier, one, I don't think we need to be divided. I
Right.
don't think food should be something that divides us.
Right.
And two, I mean, food is a result of, centuries of history, right? So that's why, for example, you'll find in, Bazella or hummus or all of these places, I mean, they're from the region. They're from Lebanon. There are certain things like falafel is Egyptian. We know that's the origin. Knafe is from Nablus, from Palestine. Mansaf is Jordanian. But the majority of our food, our day-to-day food, is actually not specific to, Jordan, Lebanon. So I chose not to do that. I chose that food should actually bring us together as opposed to be another, separator, let's say.
So someone interested in Mediterranean, and of course the Mediterranean food, Middle Eastern food, Arabian food is part of the Mediterranean diet, which is very healthy.
Yeah.
So there is a big interest. There have been a lot of Americans who have served overseas in the Middle East. I see that interest growing a lot. For somebody that hasn't ventured into Middle Eastern or Mediterranean or Arabian food, what are some of the things that you would tell them? What would be the spices that they should look for first, to find? And I think all these spices now are available at Ziyad products at mainstream stores. They don't have to go, to the find the, rare little ethnic store. They're everywhere. But what are some of those ingredients that you think, maybe you could talk a little bit about that are common to Middle Eastern foods that you in
Absolutely.
your recipes?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I mean, definitely any Arabic kitchen needs to have some mixed Arabic spice. So, you find that under the name of seven spices or, the seven spice mix or the Arabic spice mix. And Ziyad obviously has that. That is a staple in, a large part of our recipes. Other spices, obviously, there's, cumin is an important one, coriander is another. And then, you gotta love the garlic. If you're gonna get into
Yes.
Arabic food, you gotta love the
Yes.
garlic. And you absolutely also have to love the coriander. And olive oil. I mean, you can't cook Middle Eastern food without, good
And
olive oil.
isn't turmeric a Middle Eastern ingredient, or am I wrong? I hear everybody talking about how turmeric is so healthy for you. They use it in everything now, and I even throw it in there because I go, "Oh, it's healthy. I better use it." Is that
So
Middle Eastern? I don't know.
turmeric of origin is not Middle Eastern. You'll find it much more in Asian foods.
Ah,
But we do have turmeric because don't forget there was the spice route, right? So again, if you go
yes,
back in history, so a lot of the Asian spices found their way to the Middle East. But turmeric is a spice we use sometimes in some of our dishes. But I would say what's super important also is, and it makes me sometimes laugh a bit because there's this, they say ancient grains. There's this new fad of ancient grains.
right,
And I look at, chefs like Gordon Ramsay or any of these, well-known chefs from Europe or the States, and, all of a sudden they're using things like frike. Frike
right,
is the new super grain, whereas frike has actually been part of our diet for centuries as Arabs, right? It's a staple. It's not a new fad. The same actually is when you talk about za'atar or thyme, the one with
right.
the suma. So what's super interesting for me as a lover of Middle Eastern food is that the non-Arabs are actually already starting to experience our ingredients through other than Arabic food, right? Because now you'll find it integrated in other cuisines. So yeah, suma is a good one as well. It's amazing. Burghul, that's another one that is
Correct wheat, correct
healthy.
wheat, right?
Exactly.
And
Absolutely.
there's coarse, there's medium, there's small. Um, I listen, Farida. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I could go on and on about food because I love Middle Eastern food, and I'll tell you why. It reminds me of my mom and dad when I eat stuffed grape leaves, when I eat stuffed squash, when I eat the lamb foods, luchia, all that stuff. It brings me closer to my parents, and I think that's one of the reasons why people in our community, the younger generation, they need to get back to Middle Eastern food. And I think the SimSim app, which, by the way, for our listeners, you go to Ziyad.com and there's a link there and it'll take you right to where you need to download that app for your iPhone or your Android phone. It's very easy, it doesn't cost anything. Farida has done a great job with so many recipes on it. I've been going through it to adjust my own recipes based on yours. I think that's very helpful. So, Farida, I just want to say thank you for joining us and doing this interview. It's really a pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking the time, actually, and for fitting me in.
All
Thank you,
right,
Ray.
Farida Shakshire, the designer of SimSim, the home of Arabic recipes. It's an app you can download. For more information, go to the partner with her at zed.com to get more information. But I urge you, get that uh, app as soon as you can and start enjoying some very healthy and great tasting foods. I'm Ray Hanania. I want to thank everybody for listening, and we will talk to you later. Bye bye, everybody.